Z Divine, Emil O's Yasharal, Prince of Israel. I'm the keyboard warrior. So we're gonna be continuing education that we were educating on yesterday, which is the reading. Let me show you what we're reading. International financial institutions, a call for change. Okay, a report to the Committee on Foreign Relations, United States Senate, 111th Congress, second session, March 10, 2010. Okay, so that's what we're on, and that's what we're gonna read. I know in the beginning of the last show I said we were gonna go over the addendums. However, I didn't realize we were only gonna be on page 10. Man, this document is gonna take 5 shows, 2-hour shows, just to read through straight. Okay, so I don't have any current events in the Israelite community, all that stuff. I do want to I want to show people something that they need. Okay. See that? Make sure you got it. Israelite identification card. Do not embalm my body nor perform an autopsy. You need one of these. I'm going to get a more professional one whenever I feel like it. I really don't, care. They can read it. It's there. I've had it for 4 years now, so it's in my pocket everywhere I go. I use it everywhere. So, you know what I'm saying? This milk's for you. But you can't have none of my cookies. Okay? So, let's get to reading so you can get smart. I need some you to help me navigate through this information so that we can build a proposal and reclaim our inheritance. Because our inheritance, right at this second, as we speak, is being hijacked by Wolfgang Struck, some lady named Jeanette, Karen Hudez, and they're linking up with the BRICS nations to beat the hell out of the world bankers. That's why I'm reading up on the world bankers now, because it's part of the package. There was a public service announcement by Karen Hudez whenever she was almost somewhat sincere about this, but she's so deep in the bottomless pit that she has accepted being used, and now she's just going with the flow. And she's being promised a hefty payout whenever she successfully hijacks Israel's inheritance. So that's her motivation. And Israel is just worthless to her. I'll talk to her again Well, I told y'all about that yesterday. She got mad. I'm not gonna bring it up today. But I had quite a few uh interesting conversations with dummies today. I'm not even gonna go over that. It was just a waste of time. So without further ado, we're gonna get right into this reading as soon as I finish swallowing this cookie. So if you didn't catch the first part of this reading, you need to watch part of episode 11. Okay. The IFI suffer from a lack of transparency regarding loan decisions, environmental impact inspection panels, project assessment, etc., which hurt both public perceptions and other effectiveness. The most recently issued public disclosure policies of the World Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, for instance, improved somewhat on the previous versions, but fell far short of what was optimal. The report makes a number of recommendations for improved public disclosure of policies and decisions at both the board and management level, and for more parliamentary consultation in borrowing countries. Nearly all the IFIs suffer from pressure to lend culture that places more emphasis on signing project agreements and getting loans out the door than on actually improving the development level of the borrowing country. There must be a systemic reorientation to focus on outcomes instead of outputs. That will require putting in new incentive structures within the banks and new evaluation mechanisms. The banks should focus more clearly on the effort to put themselves out of business by graduating countries from their soft loan windows and eventually out of borrowing completely. When the World Bank reaches the milestone of being in a country for 50 years, it should not be a cause for celebration. Specifically, the executive boards of the development banks should require presentation of projects and programs at their completion to put an emphasis on results and to incentivize development bank professionals to focus on the results of projects rather than the amounts. Currently, board review of projects and programs is only done at the approval stage. In addition, the development banks need to install meaningful staff evaluation systems so that professionals are rewarded for good project design and implementation rather than for promoting large projects in important countries. To that end, the banks should develop a common evaluations framework so that results of the different development banks can be compared across the board and within countries. Projects should be designed with clear indicators so that results can be measured, and the indicators should be published so civil society can track the project's progress. Also, the development bank should sell advisory services to interested countries rather than requiring that countries borrow in order to receive advice from the development banks. Regarding lending to resource-rich developing countries, which has been of particular interest to the CFRC, banks should focus on extractive industry transparency initiative, principles of revenue, transparency, and fighting corruption, with an emphasis on acting before resource revenues start flowing in large amounts. Now, this whole thing that they're describing here, I mean, basically the entire package is just a realization that Israel is about to come to power. So now they want to try to utilize some type of advice on a biblical standard of service versus oppression. Okay, so they're getting back to the rule of law, which was founded on biblical principles, uh, which is greatly appalling the UN and all kinds of every Muslim Islamic power, because they particularly despise the Bible, especially uh, Jewish people as well. So I mean, just about every strong establishment, Catholicism, they hate the Bible. So whenever you get back to the a principle of service over oppression, then you're going to meet incredible resistance by the world powers. But they're going to lose the battle, because the Father is pouring out His Spirit on all flesh, and what that means is that Israel figured out that you beat them down and tried to make their name no longer known in the earth. Okay, so since we know this, we let it be known as much as we can within our field of reach. Whoever we can reach. So that spirit being poured out on, like, say for example, like my little personal field. Let's say for example, I can reach 20,000 eyes and ears. Okay, then the people in my farm, they can be able to reach 2 or 3 people a piece. So now you went from 20,000 to 40,000 to 60,000, if it's possible. So the way that you water the farm is important. You have to water your crops with love. You have to water it correctly, you know what I'm saying? You have to prune your plants often. So you can't just have people who don't agree with you and meet you with resistance at every turn, damaging your crops. They are an infestation that you need to get rid of. Okay, so that's that on the ministry aspect of it. Now, the reason I say that is because you got your crops and everything, your own personal farm. You're trying to reach as many ears as possible. So that's slowly reaching all flesh. And I would venture to guess, right? I would venture to guess that the majority of intelligent people in the United States have noticed that Israelites are here. They just have misnomers about it. I think that it's Islamic, and they just don't have like a square box that they can put it into to classify it well enough. So they just lump it into a black supremacy box. But all Israelites realize that most Israelites realize that people other than black people are Israelites. There are still like probably 10 to 15% of Israelites who think that uh, Israelites today are only black people, and that's you got to be a special type of retarded and stupid and unable to learn in order to imagine that. So that's how that part goes. Now, once with so many people knowing that we're here, okay, it gives them an opportunity to choose. Okay, so the ones who rejected are the 2/3 of that's talked about in the Bible who will meet destruction. They're going to join the civil war that's coming up next year, August of next year. It's going to be a full-fledged civil war in the United States. It's probably going to be all around the world, but it's going to be especially in the United States. It's probably going to start in the United States. And what's going to start it, I mean, other than these little minor little provocations of these police killing and police brutality and police getting more aggressive than they I mean, like they've always been, but people are starting to take notice of that now all of a sudden for whatever reason. I don't know why, but you know, most people are just dumb and ignore everything. Now, those are just provocations to get you warmed up for what's coming next August. Now, in the next month or two, you're going to see the Black Panthers beating the hell out of cops everywhere. That's gonna, you know, it's gonna look like, okay, you're not a part of the Civil War. You're gonna say, oh, these are just rogue cops and rogue black people who are just extremists and fighting each other. That's what you're gonna think. But the intelligent people are going to realize, based on the Bible, that this is just warm up to get you prepared for the race war in August. And what's going to pop it off all the way and get black people out of their homes, every last able-bodied male is going to come out of their house whenever they see Obama get assassinated. The banksters are going to move him out of office by way of a bullet to his head, more than likely. Got to be his head, because that's just where people like to get shot at. They like getting shot in the head. So since he enjoys getting shot in the head, you might see, I don't know if this is a fact or not, but you might see, which I doubt this part, but I'm going to speculate on this part anyway. You might see the Pope come over here, and then they put the Obama clone or the Obama original. I don't know which one is in office now, the clone or the original. You're going to see him back standing, and that's going to issue in a national crisis. That's going to kick in all the FEMA laws and all that stuff, to where they can relocate you and all that stuff, and FEMA takes over the government. And Obama's going to be the king of that government. So more than likely, it's going to be the Obama clone that's running that government, because the original Obama is going to attempt to get more and more sincere based on the pleas from his Israelite wife, who is the Queen of Israel today. So once they see this happening, see, he's lobbying right now as we speak for reparations. Okay, so he's secretly going around, you know, gaining support for reparations. So that's his goal. So when he starts talking about that next year, that's when they're gonna come over and go ahead and take him out. That's gonna be between June and July. My prediction is July 3rd, but it could be between June 20th and July, the end of July, July 30 or something. But my prediction is July 3rd. Okay, so that's gonna drive all the sleepwalkers, the black people in America that are completely dumb and ignore everything we've been saying all these years to them because they refuse to learn. And since you refuse to learn, then God is going to refuse you. He's going to kill you and your children and the rest of your family. That includes my family. So, you know, I'm just preparing you with the knowledge so that you can prepare, because you have to plan these things just like we have to plan to get our inheritance. Because the, the 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 nations will not stop ever hating uh, the real Israelites. Okay, so uh, your imagination, assuming that the nations are going to bring our inheritance to us door to door, is absurd. We have to create a proposal and take it to them and prophesy and accuse them. And then the Father is going to put everything in place, based on his angels, and his angels on earth, his spiritual disembodied angels, and his human angels. He's going to put everything in place to where we get our inheritance. Okay, so also being an Israelite national, you have to nationalize yourself and stop stop. I mean, I guess it's okay. It's okay to cope with your slavery. You know what I'm saying? Right now, I understand that, but somehow you're gonna have to try to start a business or work with an Israelite who owns a business, and everybody start working for him. Like I see quite a few truckers that own their own trucks and own their own shipping routes and stuff like that. So undoubtedly, their minds have to be prepared and thinking on the level of, whenever everything hits the fan, then I'm gonna have to get food and deliver it to my people. I'm pretty sure they're thinking that way. So it would behoove you. I strongly advise that you link up with an Israelite who owns a business so that you can help them in any way, shape, form, or fashion. While we're still in captivity, and until we get our inheritance. Okay, so once we get our inheritance, then we can get home. We're gonna get a little small portion of it. Get home. This is after the elections that we have. We're gonna appoint a leader over us during the elections. Then the leader is going to accuse the nation formally, and we're going to have a proposal in place to get part of Solomon's uh, Israelites' inheritance. You know what I'm saying? Because what I'm saying, it's not just Solomon's; it's the whole entire family of Israel, which is worldwide, every country on earth. Okay. So then we're going to get some of the money and then go home to Tel Aviv, where people are already building houses for us. The Bible says that you're going to live in houses uh, that were built for you. You're going to eat from vineyards that were planted for you. That's just a precursor to the extensive farming that's going to happen once we get home, because the heathen nations are going to have to be the employees for all facets of industries. The we're gonna own car companies and technology companies, and we're gonna farm and we're gonna be the mass food distributor, just like the Jewishers are today. And I just learned today that the hydrogen bomb and the neutron bomb were invented by a Cohen. A Cohen is Cohen, and a Cohen is a Zionist, a top Zionist. That's like one of the top Zionist families, and their whole mentality is uh, our mentality as world leaders is going to be very similar to what you see in the Zionists and the Jewishers today around the world, uh, minus the Talmudic understanding of their mentalities. Okay, so uh, I was just surprised to learn that. I mean, whenever you are in the Israelite heritage for a number of years, or you learn that the Jewishers run everything. Okay, so when we come into power, we're going to be the ones running everything. So now the difference is that they are satanic, and we are ruled by the Heavenly Father, who's the Almighty Jesus Christ, according to Revelations 1:8. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that part, and then I can get back to this reading. Okay. Regarding lending to resource-rich developing countries, which has been a particular interest to the SFRC, banks should focus on extractive industry transparency initiative principles of revenue transparency and fighting corruption, with an emphasis on acting before resource revenues start flowing in large amounts. Relatively small amounts of aid money could thus help channel large amounts of countries' own funds toward poverty reduction. That's their goal, is to reduce poverty and alleviate poverty. Because corruption has been shown to be a decisive factor in hobbling development, all banks should embed oversight funds into project and program financing so that an adequate percentage of the funds can be used by borrowing countries to support monitoring, investigations, prosecutions, and technical assistance for oversight. Okay, so what we learned yesterday is that corruption means racism. Okay, so it's economic racism, environmental racism, biological racism, medical racism. You know, everything that they control, they base it on oppressing Israelites. Okay. Prior to the global economic crisis that struck in 2008, see how that we talked about this yesterday. The global economic crisis in 2008. There was also one in 2001, because it happens every 7 years during the time of the fake jubilee of the Jewishers. The Jewishers jubilee has the timing off. So since it's a satanic timing, the Father continues to remind the world, who are blinded by the Jewishers and don't know that the Jewishers are not the Jewishers for whatever reason. That I don't know how they're ignoring all the information on that, because it's everywhere. But most people think that the Jewishers in the land are Israelites from the Bible, including the Jewishers themselves. Okay, but the Father continues to remind them that they're not the Jewishers by attacking you know, their holidays, their satanic holidays. Okay. So prior to the global economic crisis, there's going to be another one. That's why you see the markets crashing recently here, because there's going to be another one September 13th and 14th. Okay. So prior to that, many had begun to question the need of rationale for the IMF. Lending was down sharply. Very few countries were enrolled in IMF programs. It's incredibly, its credibly, its credibility and popularity were badly damaged by both the Russian financial collapse and the Asian financial collapse crisis. And the organization was forced to institute a 20% cut in personnel. However, early in 2009, as the financial crisis swept the globe, it was evident that the IMF was best suited for crisis management, and the G20 voted the triple IMF's resources. That's why I said that we'll most likely triple the resources of each country as we take control over the next next decades. When we take control, and they come to us with their plans to improve and develop their countries, we're going to give them three times as much as they need or as they think they need, and hold them accountable. Not like they're fakely doing. They just go to whomever is running the development program and trusting their reports. But Israelites are going to go into the communities and see what the problem is, and we're not just going to take those problems lightly. We're going to alleviate the problems and fire anyone who abuses their power through racism and trying to marginalize Israelites all over the world, the sleep Israelites, the ones who survived the war. This abrupt reversal of fortune could be oversimplified into the question, what do you do with the firemen when there is no fire? As one IMF official put it, congressional debate over the Obama administration's request for Congress to authorize the U.S. portion of the new funds would have been a good opportunity to explore the role and function of the IMF in crisis and non-crisis situations. Unfortunately, that debate did not happen. The process for authorization of the IMF funds did not follow the usual procedures and proved unnecessarily partisan. See, the partisan is just another word for racism. Just like when you saw Obama get into office, right? He is 100% thinks exactly like a white racist, except he's black. He has black skin. So the white racist decided to block any type of legislation that he proposes because he has black skin. And just like what's your boy name? Donald Trump said, let's make America white again, as if they're not white enough. Okay. As U.S. legislative action was critical for many of the issues related to IMF reform and enhanced funding, the rushed legislative process, as described in more detail in the report, denied Congress the opportunity to thoughtfully promote needed changes at the IMF. In the meantime, there are a number of obvious reforms the IMF should undertake, many of them related to improved transparency and consultations with the parliaments of borrowing countries, providing the significant requirements for reform that come with IMF programs. The IMF should also develop guidelines to ensure that its financing will not exacerbate conflict or underlying hostilities when lending to a post-conflict or current conflict country. And it should explicitly judge a country's appropriate level of military spending as an indicator of financial health. Staff have visited the headquarters of each IFI and repeatedly interviewed Treasury and IFI officials about the policies and operations of each bank. A number of recommendations have emerged related to IFIs in general and to specific institutions. They are detailed in the following section. These are the recommendations. Committee staff developed specific recommendations for the administration, Congress, and the international community to reform the international financial institutions and help them adjust to the changing needs and evolving standards of a post-economic crisis world. The Obama administration should, number one, focus on the ultimate goal of the international financial institutions succeeding in their development and economic missions and thereby putting them out of business. Push the institutions to pay closer attention to the steps needed for governments to generate their own revenue and access capital markets on a favorable basis. Encourage the institutions to set up clear graduation guidelines for a country to move from being a borrower to becoming a donor. See, that's what they don't want. They want to keep the countries dependent, like an abusive boyfriend. Undertake a review to determine what, if anything, the international financial institutions could have done to prevent the recent global financial crisis. Steps should be taken to integrate lessons learned into future IMF and development bank activities. Consider delaying a G20 commitment for capital increases for the multilateral development banks until it is clear that the capital infusions are necessary. Needed reforms are underway, and upcoming elections of leadership positions at some development banks are completed. To the extent possible, the administration should pursue temporary capital increases, given that the impact of the global financial crisis will eventually wane. Number 5, commission a review of potential cost savings and the international financial institutions. Opportunities to reduce spending at these organizations must be examined, and the institutions should commit to rigorous budgetary discipline to make sure that as many resources as possible are being used to fight poverty and maintain financial stability. Preserve United States leadership of the World Bank and senior level positions at the other IFIs. Having an American at the helm of the World Bank helps ensure continued U.S. support for the institution and facilitates communication with the World Bank. Historically, the president of the World Bank has been a United States citizen. The managing director of the IMF has been European. The president of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has been European. The president of the African Development Bank has been African. The president of the Asian Development Bank has been Japanese. And the president of the Inter-American Development Bank has been the Central or South America. Should the administration choose not to follow this recommendation, any deal to loosen the citizenship directives on leadership at the IMF or World Bank should include loosening the citizenship directives at the regional development banks. Maintain United States voting shares and veto rights at the international financial institutions. As talks continue at the G20 or reallocating shares at the IFIs, The administration should not agree to a deal where the United States voting share declines or whether the United States loses its veto over certain policies, given the size of the United States economy and the importance of the I advise to United States policy interests. Now, I want to mention something here, and is that this World Bank and IMF are not the most powerful bank. The most powerful bank is the Bank of Switzerland. Okay. Now, the reason that is the case is because they're still on the Babylonian construct of one world government that happened in Babylon under Nimrod when they built the Tower of Babel and like that. So their whole goal is to unify the earth and make a name for themselves. They want to do this without the Heavenly Father. Except for this time, when they accomplish their goal like they did back in Nimrod's day, the the gods are not going to come down here to confound the languages and confound English and stuff like that, and then send everybody around the world because we're already around the world. What they're going to do this time is he's going to come and reign on. He's going to be the ruler. The reason he's going to be the ruler is because we're going to elect him the ruler. Okay, so we're going to elect our own leader. Then we're going to go home and take over the earth by way of our inheritance. Our inheritance is going to be delivered to us. Day and night, the doors of the temple will not close. Day and night. The temple is the treasury. Okay, so now the heathen nations are going to bring our inheritance to us. That's going to make them very powerless against us. Okay, and then the Heavenly Father is going to return and reign over us and over the leader that we chose. So when that happens, that gives us control over the one world government that they had successfully set up. So only the resistors, the sleepwalkers who are going to join the race wars next year and are swayed by any type of national programming that they program these sleepwalker robotic people who don't ever learn anything that the programmers program into those sleepers, the sleepers perform. So the media makes sleepwalkers do whatever they want them to do. Okay, so we're led by the Heavenly Father and we do what the Heavenly Father wants us to do. So that's why we're going to be over all of them. The problem is that the majority of them are going to die, which is, I mean, it's a problem for them, but it's great. It's great news for us. Well, of course, we would prefer every last one of them to live, but no one ever listens. So they must die. There's a imagination that goes on in many Israelite camps, famous camps, because the lesser famous camps don't think like this. But there are a lot of famous camps who imagine that they're going to be the ones purging Israelites from our nation. I mean, you might get one or two. It's possible. But what I'm telling you and have been telling you for years now, and you know, just because you got 20 people in your camp, you imagine that what I'm saying makes no never mind to you. And your leader has been in the game for 50 years and he's old and gray and on his last leg. You think that what I say makes no sense. It should not be accepted as reality. Okay, but what I'm telling you is that these countries, the caliphate, the reconstructed caliphate of the Ottoman Empire, who is also teamed up with Russia and China are going to be the ones killing Israelites, the 2/3. You ain't gonna do nothing but run and be scared when that happens. So you got your imagination mixed up a little bit there. You need a new teacher. Okay. So the lesser known Israelite schools have this brotherly love concept, which is the actual way that it goes. That any Israelite you see, whether he's a Islamite, a Muslim, or Kemite, or whatever, just because they don't know that they're Israelite does not mean that you can't show mercy on them. So the reason you're going to realize that is because when they see you, they're going to be like, oh man, a black man. I finally seen a black man after all this bloodshed. I'm happy. And you're going to have mercy on that Israelite brother. And then you're going to try to teach him a little bit. And then when he refuses your teaching, you're going to send him back out there into the world to continue fighting and being stupid. Okay? Now, the only fighting we're going to do is clean up the mess. So the dummies are going to be severely weakened. And the Israelites are a very, very deep population. So we're going to be sit back and watch you kill each other. And then once y'all are weak to death and the planes come in and bomb everybody and all that stuff, then we're going to come in and clean up the mess. All right, that's just plain as day. So we're going to be the ones that's the fire that's going to cause Esau to be stubble. And Ephraim is going to be the flame that's going to help us cause Esau to be the stubble. And Ephraim is the entire northern kingdom of Israel. All right. So now that you know that, I can continue reading. Maintain United States voting shares and veto rights at the international financial institutions. Oh, yeah. My apologies. I had brought that up because the Swiss bank in Switzerland is the capital of the Babylonian religion. That is the capital. The reason being is because they stole the most gold. So they're the best conquerors. Okay. So they rule the rest of the nations. All right. So they consider themselves the pharaohs of today. All right. And that's why I was led to believe that the leader of the dragon family, the Drake dude, I was led to believe in my own studies that he was the ruler of the earth. But I come to find out the Bible says that Nebuchadnezzar is going to rule the earth. And the leader of the Drake family is not Nebuchadnezzar. Obama is Nebuchadnezzar. So that's why the Bible says that the dragon gave his power to the beast. And Obama is the beast. He's also the leopard. You look up leopard in your blue letter, you just go on the blue letter and look up leopard, you'll see the predictions about him. Okay. Also, if you go to the Denver murals in the Denver airport and look at the leopard murals, you'll see his daughters mourning over the leopard corpse. Okay. And then you have Alex Jones priming the entire white racist community. They try to, white racists love to make it look like they are for black people. So you have him every other sentence comparing Obama to John F. Kennedy and Lincoln, because they were the only two presidents assassinated. So he knows what's going to happen, and he knows that his people are going to do it. And of course he's happy about that because it's a black guy. Alrighty. As talks continue at the G20 on reallocating shares at the IFIs, the administration should not agree to a deal where the United States voting share declines or where the United States loses its veto over certain policies. Given the size of the United States economy and the importance of the IFIs to United States policy interests. Clearly, post summaries of U.S. votes on international financial institution projects and programs on the international page of the Treasury Department website, the Bush administration began posting whether it obtained from voting, voted no, or voted yes on development bank projects. But it is very difficult to find the web page. Number 9. Reveal additional U.S. executive director positions that are delivered at the international financial institutions. Current United States statute calls on the U.S. directors to share their statements with Congress on inspection panel cases, operational policies, and projects with significant environmental impacts. The administration should voluntarily release the detailed U.S. positions on projects in countries of specific foreign policy interests, such as Iraq and Afghanistan, and on projects in areas of particular sensitivity, such as energy and post-conflict reconstruction. Number 10, press the international financial institutions to work together. Close collaboration is critical because the mandates of the development banks and the IMF, development and financial stability, are inherently connected and impact each other. For example, when development banks provide budget support loans to countries, they should work with the IMF and obtain an assessment letter. The IMF should utilize development bank tools such as conflict filters when lending to post-war countries. Encourage the international financial institutions to systematically factor in the role of conflict to ensure that their financing does not inadvertently exacerbate conflict. The World Bank developed a conflict filter for Sri Lanka, a series of questions to be asked at each stage of project development, which should be expanded for use in other countries and by the other international financial institutions. Promote parliamentary approval of international financial institution projects and programs. The executive branches of hold on, I just thought of something here. Encourage the international financial institutions to systematically factor in the role of conflict to ensure that their financing does not inadvertently exacerbate conflict. Okay, post-war countries. This is what I'm looking at. Now, there's a independent country, right? That's very tiny, and it's off near Key West, or is Key West, or near Key West, or something like that in Florida. Okay, now what they did was they nationalized and then declared war on the United States, and then the next day they surrendered. Okay, so this legitimized them as a country, and then they sought post-war funds from the World Bank and got billions of dollars to develop their country. So that could be our seed money. That strategy could be utilized to be our seed money to get back to Telerod first, and then we can have our plans and proposals in place in order to go in front of the Pharaoh which the pharaoh gave his power to the beast. So Obama is now the pharaoh. Just want to make sure y'all are aware of that. The pharaoh, the pharaonic line after the Ptolemies, the white pharaohs that conquered Egypt. Uh, that line goes into Switzerland and is headquartered in Switzerland, and it's headed by some guy named Drake. I have his full name in my records and stuff like that, so I can't remember everything that I read. But so he's the dragon. He's the dragon who gave the power to Obama to do what he's doing. Okay, so now that you know that, that's a great thing. Okay, number 12. Promote parliamentary approval of international financial institution projects and programs. The executive branches of few developing countries are required to seek parliamentary approval of international financial institution loans or grants. Few developing countries have parliaments that set a ceiling within which the executive branch can conclude individual agreements with the international financial institutions. Number 13, review any connection between the misuse of funds and debt relief. Debt relief has been provided to countries that cannot afford to pay back their loans. It has not been provided for loans made knowingly to countries with corrupt leaders who misused or stole the funds. Number 14, designate an ambassador at large for global transparency to promote disclosure at the international financial institutions that is consistent with efforts within the United States government and at other international organizations, including the United Nations. Okay, now I want to bring this up. Now, when rappers say, "I'm gonna make it rain on them," and you see money flying out their hands, that tells you that rain is being compared to money. Okay, so whenever the president of the United States, who is the pharaoh of earth, is putting sanctions on a country, he is effectively shutting up the rain to that country. Okay, because rain produces crops. Since the farming process has been hijacked by mega producers that are controlled by Jewishers, mega farmers and stuff like that, and GMO specialists and stuff like this, then the individual countries don't have much farming going on in their countries as they would if there weren't mega farmers in play. Okay, so whenever I'm telling you that because the sanctions, okay, the prosperity is rain. Okay, so the sanction is lack of rain to make the crops grow, and the crops is just the prosperity of the people. You see what I'm saying? So I hope that was clear. So that might help you with other prophecies and stuff in the Bible. Designate an ambassador at large for global transparency to promote disclosure at the international financial institutions that is consistent with efforts within the United States government and at other international organizations, including the United Nations. Number 15, actively recruit U.S. citizens for positions at the international financial institutions and help applicants navigate the hiring process. Number 16, Congress should Consider supporting capital increases for multilateral development banks that have successfully implemented needed reforms. Okay, now, when I see one-liners like this, I like to examine them a little bit closer. Consider supporting capital increases for multilateral development banks that have successfully implemented needed reforms. Okay, see, they make this a one-liner because uh, they they are not sincere about these banks actually alleviating poverty. So they just, hopefully you don't read all 77 pages of this. It's just like you wouldn't read all 2,000 pages of the medical act that passed. So, or the insurance act that passed, Obamacare or whatever it's called. So, just wanted you to know that. Consider providing funds to clear the United States' current arrears, unmet commitments to the development banks, the existence of which undermines the United States' influence at these entities. Okay. Fixed tax disincentives, which penalize Americans working abroad. Okay. Let me just check something here really quickly. I'll be right back with it. Okay. The International Monetary Fund should, number 19, when providing loans to resource-rich countries, take steps to account for the billions in revenues that are streaming into the country. Specifically, the IMF should implement the recommendations from its own guide to resource revenue transparency, obtain a commitment to not censor individuals who raise concerns about oil revenue management, require disclosure of public official conflicts of interest in companies bidding for oil and gas rights, and call for an independent audit of the Ministry of Finance and Petroleum. Macroeconomic reform. Macro means generalized economics, broad like a worldview. Micro means going to your house and finding out how much money you're making. Okay. Macroeconomic reform. Macro is big, micro is small. Just remember that. Economic development and participatory governance all rely upon dissemination of information in order for the government to be more effective and to enable civil society to play a productive role in increasing accountability of government officials. Number 20, require countries to take anti-corruption measures, reveal their budgets, and implement public financial management guidelines on budget transparency for loans to the government's budget, such as the flexible credit line that was created in 2009. '21. Provide grants rather than loans to countries that clearly cannot repay their loans, such as Haiti after the January 2010 earthquake. Number 22. Utilize proceeds in excess of projections from gold sales to fund grants and debt relief for the poorest countries. Now, okay, so all of these are spark my mind to say, okay, as a nation and as a poor nation, we can get a large grant in order to get home. So that is a strong possibility because they love grants. They love giving grants. I don't know why they do that. What I don't know what is so special about them doing that, but they do it very often. So, if we have a strong plan in place to build our nation, then a grant should not be a problem at all. Okay, utilize proceeds in excess of projections from gold sales to fund grants and debt relief for the poorest countries. And we are the poorest country. Engage with parliaments in the course of developing an IMF program. While IMF programs include significant reforms, sometimes requiring legislative action, parliaments are rarely consulted by the IMF. 24. Develop guidelines to ensure that IMF financing will not exacerbate the conflict or underlying hostilities when lending to a post-conflict or current conflict country. 25. Not shy away from making recommendations on the appropriate level of military expenditures, as they can be a significant determinant of a country's financial health. Okay, let me write this down that I just spoke, because that's a very important situation that I had never thought of before, which is we can get a grant in order to get home. Okay. Receive grant from Swiss Bank. Notice I said Swiss Bank instead of World Bank and the IMF, because the Swiss Bank runs every other bank. Receive grant from Swiss Bank to get home to Telluride. All right. Hopefully y'all have your pens and paper handy. Or you can pause now and get a pen and paper handy, and then I'll be reading when you get back. Okay. The multilateral development banks, the World Bank, African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, European Bank and Reconstruction and Development, and the Inter-American Development Bank should, okay, see this? Now, this would make me approach this type of separation, which is important. See how they separated the nations? This is the type of thing that God wants. That's why their New World Order is going to happen, because the more that they do what they're doing and conquering and things like this, they're realizing that it's too much static and pressure, and it's impossible to conquer the whole world. So what you have to do is structure the whole world separately according to their nationalities in order to achieve the goal of a one world government. They're finally coming to realize this situation. So this type of situation would make me approach the African Development Bank first. I mean, of course, I'm going to approach the African Development Bank simultaneously with the Swiss Bank, but I would include the African Development Bank as I approach the Swiss Bank, because Israel is in Africa. So they're going to consider us Africans. This is why the Africans hold so firm, the sleep Israelites who have a strong affinity towards Africa hold so firmly to Africa, because they realize that they're from Africa, but they just imagine that they're from the west coast of Africa or something like that. They don't know how their ancestors got to the west coast of Africa, which was they got there and in the 1500s, uh, but they can't tell you what happened between uh, 3000 BC and 1500 AD. Their minds are completely blank on the history of Earth. So, you know, it just takes a level of education, okay? And the one major reason that it's hard for people who don't study to accept the Israelite nationality is because the Israelites present differently than a Muslim or a Moor or a Kimite. Uh, the Kemites, Moors, and Muslims, they like smooth things. Lie to me real sweet and softly, so that I can just could go along with the peace and brotherhood. So that's why I said the famous Israelites can't need to revamp their image and come nice and smooth and softly. You know, when these people go out on the streets and do their ministries for their lives, they they approach very gently and coerce and persuade people to get involved with their movements. The Israelites, realizing that you're either going to accept this reality or die. Our mentality is generally comes off very harsh, and you know, we get kind of frustrated. But the Bible says you can't beat up the saints that way. You beat up the saints, you're going to be held responsible for beating them up like that, verbally like that. So your best bet is to do kind of like a technique that Zabak has been doing lately. Everybody knows Zabak. So he goes out on the street now and he's very nice and gentle to everyone. He might go out. He generally has been going out on his own. When he goes out on his own, or maybe with a cameraman and a reader, then he's not aggressive at all. But when his camp is behind him, his 15 people behind him, the audience feels threatened and they challenge Zabak physically. So he has to be just as aggressive as them in order to back them down, so that it does not become physical. Okay, so that's why you should. I mean, you got 20 people standing right there. I mean, those same 20 people, one person could be on that block, another person could be on that block, another person could be on that block. You can go out in twos, like the Father sent them out in pairs, and they just spread out everywhere and taught the word. It doesn't have to be 20 people in one spot. You need to send them out in pairs all over the city, and every last one of you film, if you can afford that many cameras, you know. I mean, but your phone is a camera, so you know, you just film with your phone. You know what I'm saying? And then so that way you won't have to get so aggressive with the people, because they're not gonna be scared of you. It's just one or two of you, you know what I'm saying? You're just sitting there talking, and then they're gonna get a little upset, but you know, everybody realizes that they can't beat an Israelite. They can't beat a sleep Israelite in hand-to-hand combat. So they're not gonna try to fight like a guy that has a Bible in his hand. You know what I'm saying? If it's just one or two of you, and I see that a lot in North Carolina. I see the camps in North Carolina. They go out in twos, two or three of them just go out. You know what I'm saying? But you know, of course, IUIC just moved to Charlotte, and they got 15 people standing somewhere in Charlotte, looked like a train station or something, and they're just yelling at everybody that walk past, which is retarded. But see, they handle themselves well though, because they try to be as nice as they possibly can, and then they're just soft anyway. But with them being in military procession like that, and military formations, and uh, answering to military commands at the drop of a second, they're ready to scrap, and people know that. So people don't even attempt to fuck with them. I ain't never seen them get in a fight. I've seen other camps get in fights, but I've never seen how you actually get in fight. But they may not show that. They possibly could have been in fights, but I don't know, because they're a very scary group of people. Now, just like when GMS had confronted uh, IUIC in Chicago, IUIC, that fat dude was scared to death just for having a contending for the faith and debating uh, little petty disagreements in the doctrine. You know what I'm saying? That dude looked like he was about to pass out or have a heart attack, or like they was all finna have a riot and get into a huge brawl or something. So he was very contentious with the GMS brothers, who was trying to be as humble as possible. And IUIC are ignorant anyway. They don't even know the word anyway. So when they were getting beat in the debate, they were just being more and more contentious, and it vexed the spirits of the GMS brothers, and they had to leave, but they left without incident, without any type of violent altercation. So that's why I tell y'all, grouping up in those big groups like that, you know what I'm saying? It scares pussies. Okay, so a real dude would not be afraid of seeing that many people. You know what I'm saying? So they could talk to you peacefully and calmly, and realize that you're just going to talk to them peacefully and calmly back. But a pussy is going to jump up and down and act crazy and start puffing and huffing and puffing and like he finna do something, knowing good and well he's going to get his head knocked off as soon as he does anything. So that's why I tell you, go out in pairs, like the Father taught his apostles. Go out in pairs so that the audience, it does not fear you so much, and they can just talk to you peacefully and rationally. And you need to recruit Israel, man. You know what I'm saying? Get them in there. You know what I'm saying? The whole purpose of you talking is to let people know that they're Israelites. You don't have to stand there and tell them the entire plan of earth from beginning to end, step to step, day for day, blow for blow. All you have to do is tell them the history of Deuteronomy 28. Okay, you go through the blessings first. Go through the history. I've never seen not one camp, and since 2010, since I've known my nationality, I've never seen one camp on the street. Now I've seen a class lesson where the St. Louis boys went through the blessings and the curses. Okay, so that was a great lesson. But I always try to encourage people to talk about the blessings too, and the blessings have already happened. The blessings happened with the rise of the Israelite Empire, and then the cursings began at the fall of the Israelite Empire, and the curses happened very slowly and gradually. All prophecies happen very, very gradually over long periods of time. So Christians and brand new Israelites and people who have accepted their Israelite heritage, who are still Christians and refuse to comprehend anything based on nationality, they think that every prophecy in the Bible happens within 2 days, 2 or 3 days. And that's not the case. Now, back to these recommendations that IMF needs to do. We're going to send our proposal to the Swiss bank, and the African Development Bank because Israelites are Africans. Okay, we're Israelite Africans. Our father is Israel, and the land that our homeland is in Africa, Northeast Africa. So the satanic world views any human on earth as the empire location, the imperial location. Okay, so you see, I hope you understand what the fuck I'm talking about. The satanic world views anyone living in Australia as an Australian. They view anyone living in Indonesia as an Indonesian. They view anyone living in India as an Indian. Anyone living in America is an American. Whereas reality and the Bible teaches us, Israelites, that humans are based on their patriarchs. So Israelites' patriarch is a man named Israel. Okay. Jewishers' patriarch is a man named Edom, who is Israel's twin brother. Okay. And then Arabs' patriarch is a man named Ishmael, who is Jacob and Esau's uncle. Okay. So now all Jacob and Esau's grandfather is Abraham. So Abraham is the father of Ishmael and the grandfather of Jacob and Esau, and through those nations and the nations that Abraham had with Keturah, through us, Israel, all nations have become blessed through us because we suffered, well, our ancestors suffered with Christ. So they obeyed Christ whenever he said, get out of Israel, whenever Rome comes to destroy Israel. So they fled from Israel, they obeyed Christ, and have been suffering pretty much ever since. But they kind of had their own kingdom from 66 AD to about 600 AD, and then they started getting beat up by the tyrannical Muslims, and then the Ottoman Empire took power in 1299 and enslaved the Israelites that had built many empires in Africa. So they had conquered a lot of Africa and enslaved the Israelites in 1299. And then they sold those slaves to what the Bible calls the Grecians, who we consider the white people, and who are actually the Jewishers. Okay, so that's the most specific information about that part. Okay, I still got some milk over here, but you're not getting any of my cookies. The multilateral development banks, the World Bank, African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and the Inter-American Development Bank should 26 plan for the future, not just the present. Projects should be designed with a long-term view. For example, agricultural projects should be designed to withstand climate change, and road projects should be developed to accommodate pedestrians in areas projected to become densely populated. That's a good idea. Okay. 27. Strengthen anti-corruption efforts. Increase resources for internal controls and anti-corruption efforts. Embed oversight funds into project and program financing so that a small percentage of the funds can be used by borrowing countries to support monitoring investigations, prosecutions, technical assistance to uh, parliamentarians, government audit agencies, and ombuds people, promoting their better oversight. Dang, what the heck is an ombuds people? I got to look that up. Sorry, I don't like reading stuff and then not knowing what it's talking about. Ombudsperson, a public official who acts as an impartial intermediary between the public and government or bureaucracy, or an employee of an organization who mediates disputes between employees and management. Okay, so I mean that's common sense. That's kind of like the White House spokesman. You know what I mean? So it's you got the public who was the investigators, the the general public, but the general public has a liaison themselves, which is the press. But uh, since the press is so big now, we don't normally hold the press responsible for what we want to know and what we want to see, but we kind of do when it comes to humongous issues that they force out into the public and force out into the open, that is utilized to manipulate our minds. So it captures our attention, and you know what I'm saying. So then we tell the press, "Hey, go cover that story." But if you had the Bible in your head, you wouldn't care anything about a majority of what's in the press. Okay. 28. Refocus attention on the impact rather than the size of goals of development bank projects and programs. Executive boards of the development banks should require presentation of projects and programs at their completion to put an emphasis on results and to incentivize staff to focus on the results of projects rather than the amounts. Currently, board review of projects and programs is only done at the approval stage. In addition, the development banks need to install meaningful staff evaluation systems so that staff are rewarded for good project design and implementation rather than for promoting large projects in important countries. Now, this is a strategy that they told another facet of this situation to do up top, because it sounded familiar. Hopefully you remember that. But instead of important countries, they've used rich countries. Okay, 29. Design a common evaluations framework that includes the collection of shared baseline data to save money and avoid repetition. Baseline data is important in determining whether or not the development bank project made an impact. Number one, 29.8. Produce comparable indicators and data dissemination standards so that results of the different development banks can be compared across the board and within countries. B. Projects should be designed with clear indicators so that results can be measured. C. Publish indicators so civil society can track the project's progress. D. Evaluate all projects and publish evaluations of all projects. E. Integrate lessons learned into project design. Okay, so now all this sounds like to me, this entire package with this service-oriented mentality, all this sounds like to me is the Heavenly Father provoked these people to put a template in place that is so clear and so precise and so well thought out that is, of course, it's only to be utilized by us because there's no way in the world the Swiss bank and the World Bank and IMF would ever do any of these things that they're promoting. So this is just a blueprint to tell Israel how to run their bank and our treasury whenever we get our inheritance. You see how that works? Okay, hopefully you do. 30. Better coordinate activities, particularly food security assistance, starting with agreements on development principles and working with host governments to adhere to national development plans. 31. Increase grants and subsidize loans for the poorest countries and create a predictable system to transfer profits to their grant making and subsidize lending windows for poor countries from the development bank's lending operations. 32. Integrate the principles of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative into extractive, ex, extractive, hold on a second, extractive industry project design. All the MDBs now endorse the EITI, but when providing financing to resource rich countries, the development bank should focus their efforts on improving revenue management and fighting corruption, conditioning loans on revenue disclosure and contract transparency, and promoting transparency before the revenues actually start flowing from extractive industries. Relatively small amounts of aid money could thus help channel large amounts of countries' own funds toward poverty reduction. 33. Revamp inspection panels and other inspection mechanisms so that people and communities negatively affected by development bank projects have clear access to redress. Current mechanisms allow complaints to be made about failures to follow development bank policy, but the only beneficiary is the bank itself, which learns of its mistakes. The affected people simply remain affected and are rarely compensated or made whole. 34. Lending to the private sector should be focused on regions and sectors that truly need additional funding to allow for the best use of scarce resources and to not crowd out the commercial lenders. 35. When lending money directly to a country's budget, require publication of the budget and implementation of adequate public financial management standards. Consult with the IMF on major budget support loans. 36. Since some emerging market countries are more interested in receiving advice than money from the development banks, consider charging for advisory services. Currently, most development banks only provide advisory services as part of a financing package. 37. Minimize the environmental impact of projects, including increasing awareness of greenhouse gas emissions. Develop and implement a strategy to lower greenhouse gas emissions trajectories while enhancing access to affordable energy services. Develop a best practice protocol for greenhouse gas accounting. The World Bank should, 38, allow the Government Accountability Office to commence the two reviews requested by Senator Lugar, Senator By, Senator Leahy, and Senator Biden, and then Senator Biden at that time. One review would examine the goals, criteria for success, and ability to fight corruption and implement procurement procedures of the World Bank's subsidized loan and grant window, the International Development Association. The other review would scrutinize the World Bank's process for conducting environmental assessments, the impact of environmental assessments on project design, and the process for assessing environmental impact after a project is completed. 39. Revise its public information policy to allow executive directors to release their executive board statements to their constituencies and to the public. The World Bank's new public information policy makes significant strides towards transparency and presumes disclosure. However, the executive directors, who are representatives of country members, are not allowed to release their statements to the board on policies and projects. The African Development Bank should, number 40, revamp its website to disclose what the African Development Bank is doing in each recipient country, noting how much is going to what project, linking relevant documents, and providing information on inspection panel cases. The current website provides limited information about the bank's activities. 41. Increase pursuit of misconduct by staff, contractors, and procuring companies, and publish the list of debarred individuals and companies. Compared to the other development banks, the African Development Bank has far fewer cases under investigation. The Asian Development Bank should, 42, publish the names of the companies that it debars due to fraud or other misconduct. 43, reform its human resources system, including the selection of staff on the basis of transparent recruiting process and external recruiting at all levels. 44, ensure that lending to middle-income countries is focused on poverty alleviation. That should be the focus. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development should, 45, spread its lending across the region and not continue concentrating its portfolio in one country. Currently, 41% of its lending goes to one borrower, Russia. The bank's limited resources clearly should be directed at countries with fewer of their own resources. A corollary, the Lugar program initially invested heavily in Russia, but over time has shifted to other countries, and Russia's contributions have increased. As Senator Lugar noted in an August 2009 letter to the Wall Street Journal, the Russian share of total non-Lugar spending has dropped from 88% to 2001 to 37% as construction projects conclude and Moscow assumes more of the cost. No such weaning process is evident for the EBRD, and Russia instead. The trend has been going in the opposite direction. 46. Focus lending to sectors and projects that lack access to market financing. Currently, some loans are reportedly going to Russian oligarchs and projects that could obtain private capital, including the oil sector. 47. Make additionally criteria more transparent and more explicit, both as a statement of policy and on individual investments. 48. Develop local currency, lending, and local capital markets. The Inter-American Development Bank should, 49, fully implement financial management reforms. The Inter-American, dang, they must not be doing something right. Okay, the Inter-American Development Bank is taking initial steps to reform its investment strategy, credit risk management, capital adequacy policy, and operational risk framework following an unrealized loss of $1.9 billion from its liquid portfolio of cash management instruments. Good gracious. 50. Provide more grants and subsidized loans for the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere, including Haiti. Okay. Discussion. The world has, this is a discussion on the 50 recommendations. The world has changed drastically since the international financial institutions were created. Private capital flows to developing countries dwarf official donor assistance to those countries. Most exchange rates float under market pressures while they were previously fixed under the gold standard. Markets for goods, services, and finance are connected. We have seen the growth of sovereign wealth funds, fluctuations in energy prices, and multiple financial crises. The recent financial crisis, which began in industrialized countries, quickly spread to emerging market and developing countries economies. Most industrialized countries, except for Iceland, have been able to finance their own rescue packages, but many poor countries have insufficient sources of capital and have turned to help from the international financial institutions. As we emerge from the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, we must ask ourselves if we are content with the structure of the international financial institutions, does the world really need the IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and Inter-American Development Bank today? How should we design them? Can they be changed to address our needs? What could the international financial institutions have done better to keep the crisis from occurring in the first place? What can they do now to best mitigate the fallout from the crisis? Do they achieve their various missions of promoting stability, fighting poverty, encouraging growth, and promoting democracy? Some of these questions are being addressed by the international community. In November 2009, G20 finance ministers said that the IFIs will play an important role in supporting our work to secure sustainable growth, stability, job creation, development, and poverty reduction. It is therefore critical that we continue to increase their relevance, responsiveness, effectiveness, and legitimacy. The G20 is examining changes to the allocation of voting power at the World Bank Executive Board, which primarily reflects countries' evolving economic weight and the World Bank's development mission. In addition, the G20 called for a review of World Bank and Regional Development Bank capital to ensure they have sufficient resources to be completed by the first half of 2010. The G20 asked the World Bank to play a leading role in responding to problems whose nature requires globally coordinated action, such as climate change and food security. And they agreed that the World Bank and the regional development banks should have sufficient resources to address these challenges and fulfill their mandates. Senator Lugar's ongoing oversight effort. At the direction of then Chairman Richard G. Lugar, the Republican staff of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in 2003 began a study of the international financial institutions following whistleblower reports of corruption related to the development banks. Staff tested the viability of policy recommendations through meetings, document reviews, and site visits to projects in Africa, Asia, Europe, and Central Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. Staff asked if the international financial institutions were the tools needed to solve the problems of today's world. Were the IFIs capable of needed changes, and what those changes would be? As chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Lugar held 6 hearings on the 108th and 109th Congress to probe how the banks could become more effective, accountable, and efficient. As Senator Lugar noted, we are living in an era when threats posed by terrorism, weapons proliferation, international communicable diseases, increasing competition for energy supplies, and other factors have enlightened many of the world's people to the need to ensure that poor nations are not left behind. But these same threats also place competing demands on national budgets. If development projects are transparent, productive, and efficiently run, I believe that they will enjoy broad support. If they are not, they are likely to fare poorly when placed in competition with domestic priorities or more tangible security related expenditures. Numerous reforms were implemented following Senator Lugar's advocacy, particularly investments to MDB anti-corruption efforts. These reforms include creation of a joint MDB framework for combating fraud and corruption in their activities and operations, movement towards cross-debarment by barring companies that violate one development bank's policies from contracts with the other development banks, a new anti-corruption and governance strategy at the World Bank, 2 new codes of conduct at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, replacing codes adopted in 1991, and amended public communications policy at the Asian Development Bank to allow the Integrity Division desecration to publicly disclose project procurement related audit reports, a strong and comprehensive whistleblowing and complaints handling policy approved by the African Development Bank in 2007, and a new code of ethics and ethics training for all staff implemented by the Inter-American Development Bank. However, much more needs to be done. Okay, so I want to say something here that the various camps, especially IGCJC, need to quit excommunicating people who disagree with their lies. Okay, so when you lie, or if you might think it's the truth. Okay, so if someone disagrees with something you say, that is not no right to kick them out of the kingdom of God. You're retarded. You know what I'm saying? A disagreement is not breaking God's law whatsoever. You're dumb. Every last one of you camp leaders are dumb. That's why I don't fuck with you niggas. So that's what I'm saying. That when like for example when General Yohana calls for the whole nation to come together, that's what you need to do. But see, the problem with General Yohana, he doesn't want to step down as the governor of the nation. You were not elected by one person. Not even 2 people came together and agreed that you should be the leader. See what I'm saying? You just made yourself a leader, went out on the streets and preached, and then gathered a bunch of drones and zombies to follow you. And I'm picking on you because you got one of the best camps in history. So you know what I'm saying? So you got a strong brotherhood and strong military presence and all that, and very good governing and a deep affinity for the Bible, and y'all brothers are tough-minded and tough people. But you were not elected as the governor of Israel. So I will never accept you as the governor of Israel until you are elected. If you can beat Tazadakia, Elder Ricard, if you can beat Tahar, if you can beat an IOIG leader, if you can beat all the rest of these camp leaders everywhere, there's a whole bunch of camp leaders. If you can beat them in a debate, and you know what I'm saying, you're going to have 10, 20, 15 debates. See what I'm saying? That's how an election works. You don't just deem yourself, crown yourself king, nigga. Hell, shit don't work like that, bro. I'm trying to tell you. If if this kingdom could just crown themselves king, they ain't not now Israelite in the history of mankind ever crowned themselves king. It's not possible for it to happen, just period. So they had to do things. Okay, so anyway, in order for you to be the governor of Israel, you got to be elected. That's all I'm saying. So you, instead of calling people home, talking about they need to come home with you being the governor, you need to call for elections like I told you 2-3 years ago on your radio show when I called in, and that Jamaican dude was cussing you out, talking about y'all had branched off of IGCJC. Everybody knows this, bro. You can't hide that information. And then Tahar told everybody that you took 15 years off. Everybody know this, bro. You won't nowhere around. You know what I'm saying? You had got disgruntled and discouraged with the whole culture. You know what I'm saying? And, you know what I'm saying? Because you know what I'm saying, everybody was too soft for you. So then when you left, when you came back, you said you only gonna deal with no cowards. People who aren't cowards. That's great. You know what I'm saying? Work for the Father. That's I applaud you. You ain't the governor of nothing, though. You are the governor of your school. You are the principal. You are a principal of your school, bro. That's all you are. Tazadaki, you are a principal of a university. That's all you are. See what I'm saying? So you people need to get it together. All right, so I'm gonna end it here. Because just thinking about the disobedience of our nation always angers me. Now, we're gonna pick it up here tomorrow at hearings. Let me write this down and make sure I know where we're at. Page 20, hearings. Okay, this is Nazir Devar, Amy Old Yasharah. I'm the Prince of Israel. I'm the keyboard warrior. I know what the Bible says to do. So we're going to have to put in place strategies to gain support to get this government underway. Because right now, nobody is forming the government. They're only sticking with their Boy Scout camp groups. And they need to quit that. All right, so I'm gone.